I welcome all of you to my channel Abhikalitra AKCCS classes. Today again we will be discussing a topic from basic electronic devices and circuits. So before we move on, please do not forget to subscribe, like and share my channel Abhikalitra AKCCS classes. The topic that we are going to discuss today is Norton's theorem, and we will take an example and then solve it using Norton's theorem, and in the last I will leave a practice problem so that you can solve it using Norton's theorem to make your concept even more concrete. So first we will be discussing about the Norton's theorem statement itself. Any combination of linear bilateral circuit elements and active sources, regardless of the connection or complexity, connected to a given load RL, can be replaced by a simple two-terminal network consisting of a single current source of IN amperes and a single impedance RN in parallel with it across the two terminals of the load RL. The IN is also then known as short circuit current flowing through the short circuited path replaced instead of RL. If you have not watched my lecture on Thevenin's theorem, then I have given the link of Thevenin's theorem in the description section. So what is this? This particular statement is very much similar to that of Thevenin's statement, right? So in Thevenin's statement, we were actually removing the load resistance. What is the load resistance? That means the resistor across which we have to find the current, right? So that was being labeled as load resistor. And if we actually replace load resistor, then we are actually left out with a open circuit. And then we were actually calculating the current that was flowing in the circuit. But in case of Norton's theorem, we will not calculate the current flowing in an open circuit. We will actually short the two terminals, right? We are going to short the two terminals, and then we are going to find out the current that is flowing through the short circuited path, which is known by the term short circuit current, or it is also known by the term Norton current, right? And then in the next step, we have to find the equivalent resistance, right? The equivalent resistance process is exactly same as that of Thevenin's statement. So for the viewers who have not yet watched my Thevenin's theorem lecture, will find the statement or whatever I am talking now will be entirely vague to you. But don't worry, please watch my video till the end, because we will be covering in depth about Norton's theorem without assuming that you must have a knowledge on Thevenin's theorem, right? In this slide, we are actually trying to find out the similarities between the two theorems, Norton's theorem and Thevenin's theorem, right? So next, IN is also called the Norton's current, I've already told, and RN is the equivalent resistance of the given network, which is viewed through the load terminals, right? And while doing that, you have to keep in mind that we have to remove RL from the given circuit, right? And we have to remove all the voltage sources by their internal impedances. What if the internal impedances are not known? If the internal impedances are not known, then the independent voltage sources must be replaced by short circuit, while the independent current sources must be replaced by open circuit while calculating RN, right? So that means that while calculating equivalent resistance, first you have to obviously remove RL from the circuit, then we have to actually replace all the voltage sources by their internal impedances. But if the internal impedances are not known, then the voltage sources are replaced by short circuit. But if there are no voltage sources present in the circuit, or if there are voltage sources as well as current sources present in your circuit, then all the current sources will be replaced by a open circuit. So again, this is a comparison, or we are trying to focus on the similarities between the two theorems, Thevenin's and Norton's. Don't worry, we will be covering each and every step in depth about Norton's theorem, right? One thing we have to keep in mind that since Rn is calculated in the same way in both the theorems, so obviously the value of Rn, or the equivalent resistance that we are actually calculating, is basically the same for Thevenin's as well as for Norton's, because the calculation technique is basically same. So for a given circuit diagram, if you calculate the equivalent resistance, the entire process will remain the same, right? So now we'll talk about the basic idea about Norton's theorem. Before we actually talk about the basic idea, I will consider the circuit diagram first. So this is the circuit diagram. So the circuit diagram consists of three voltage sources, 20 volt, 8 volt and 4 volt, and there are different resistors marked from R1 to R5 and with different resistor values. So first we will see what is the question. The question is find the current in 8 ohm resistor using Norton's theorem. So that means the current that we have to calculate is through the 8 ohm resistor, and we have to keep in mind that the resistor across which we have to calculate or compute the current is the resistor that is known by the term load resistor. So this resistor will be labeled as RL. So that is what it is said here. The resistor across which we have to calculate the current is denoted by RL, which is the load resistance. So here we write RL equal to 8 ohm, right? So the next step is that we have to remove RL from this circuit, and we will be left with two open port terminal, and those two open port terminal will be marked as A and B. We obtain a new circuit diagram which will look something like this, and we have two open terminals. These two open terminals are labeled as A and B, right? So in case of Thevenin's theorem, we were actually concerned in computing or calculating the current that was flowing through the entire circuit, keeping these two ports open. But in case of a Norton's theorem, we will actually short these two ports, and then we will try to compute the current that is flowing through the short circuited path. So this is the modified circuit diagram. See, I have short the two terminals A and B. These are the two terminals A and B, and we have to find the current that is flowing through this particular section A and B, or through this particular wire A and B, right? So now all the circuit elements which are present to the left of A and B, are all the circuit elements which are passive in nature in case of Norton's theorem. That means if I cover all the circuit elements with a rectangular box which are to the left of A and B, then this rectangular box will contain all the DC sources and linear resistances, right? So the voltage drop across A and B is equal to the voltage drop or rise that is happening inside all the voltage sources and the resistors inside the rectangular box. And all the resistors that are present in the rectangular box should have a equivalent resistance, right? That equivalent resistance again is responsible for the voltage drop that is happening across terminals A and B, right? So what does Norton says? Norton proved that the circuit inside the box would produce exactly the same load voltage, which is equal to the Norton current times the Norton resistance in parallel with the load resistance. That means all the circuit elements which are present inside the rectangular box will have a certain amount of voltage drop across terminals A and B. The voltage drop across terminals A and B is equal to the Norton current times the Norton resistance in parallel with the load resistance, right? In times mean this is a multiplication of Norton resistance which is in parallel with the load resistance. In Thevenin's theorem, if you remember, there load resistance was in series with the equivalent resistance. But in case of Norton's theorem, the load resistance is in parallel with the Norton resistance, which is given by Rn, and the Norton current source is given by In. So in Thevenin's theorem, we were actually using Thevenin's equivalent voltage source, but in case of Norton's theorem, we are interested in taking up the Norton's current source, which is given by In. So why Norton's theorem is used? Norton's theorem is used because if we want to find the current across a certain resistor, then if that resistor is a part of a very complicated circuit, then if I can actually form a very simple circuit and then try to find out the current that is flowing through the resistor, then that will be more easier to calculate. So Norton's theorem actually gives you that simplified circuit, and that simplified circuit is known as Norton's equivalent circuit. So how does a Norton's equivalent circuit look like? So this is how a Norton's equivalent circuit looks like, right? So the portion of the circuit diagram which is bounded by red outline rectangle consists of two circuit elements. One is current source, another one is a resistor. This current source is the Norton current or the equivalent current that is flowing down from the terminals A and B, which is labeled as IN. The resistor over here is the equivalent resistor of all the resistors that were present in the rectangular box, right? And it is labeled as Rn, which is Norton's equivalent resistance. There are two ports A and B, right? This is A port, this is B port, and this particular resistor is the RL resistor, which is given as RL. What is the voltage drop across the terminals A and B, or the voltage drop across RL? The voltage drop across RL will then be given as IN times Rn parallel to RL. So this is the voltage drop across A and B, but we have to find the current that is flowing through the resistor. So that we will discuss in the next slide. So in this slide, we will first discuss about the steps that we have to follow in order to solve any given circuit or any complicated circuit using Norton's theorem, right? So the first step is short the branch through which the current is to be calculated. That means we have to calculate the current. In our example, we will be calculating the current through 8 ohm resistor. So the 8 ohm resistor will be removed from the circuit and the two open terminals will then be short circuited, right? Then what we have to do, we have to obtain the current through the short circuited branch using any of the network simplification techniques. The current thus obtained is the Norton current IN. Then we will be calculating the equivalent impedance Rn as viewed through two terminals of interest by removing the branch impedance and making all independent sources inactive, right? So next is we will draw the Norton's equivalent circuit showing a current source IN with the impedance Rn parallel with it, and we will also connect the branch impedance or the load resistance which is parallel to Rn as well. So the current that is now flowing through the entire circuit or through the load resistance RL is given by I equal to IN times Rn divided by Rn plus RL. So this is the formula that we have to remember, or this is the current I that we have to calculate this. So now from the next slide, we will be actually breaking up the entire Norton's theorem into simple steps, and then we will understand each step that how we are actually going to solve the example that we have taken, right? So first we'll consider the circuit diagram again. So the first step would be to remove RL from the given circuit. So if I remove RL from the given circuit, I will obtain a circuit diagram like this with two open terminals labeled as A and B. Circuit contains two ports or terminals which are labeled as A and B. Now we have to actually connect the terminals A and B, or we have to short circuit the terminals A and B and find out the current that is flowing through the terminals A and B. So how does it look? It will look something like this, and the terminals A and B are over here, right? So we have to find the current that is flowing down the wire A and B, and before doing that we will actually mark or label all the junctions present in the circuit, right? So we have labeled it as A, B, C, D, E, F, G and H, right? So again, the labeling is according to your own convenience and own wish, right? The next work is that we have to find the current flowing down the wire A and B. So in order to apply the Kirchhoff law, first we have to assume the current directions in our circuit diagram. So starting with F, if I assume that a current is flowing through the wire from F to G and I label it with I1, then after I1 reaches to point G, I assume that another current I2 is flowing down the wire G to D, right? So the remaining amount of current that will flow from G to H is I1 minus I2, right? So when I1 minus I2 reaches the junction H, I assume that another current I3 is flowing through the wire H to A, that is labeled with I3. If I3 is flowing from H to A, the remaining amount of current which will flow down the wire H to C will be I1 minus I2 minus I3. Right? I3, which is flowing from the wire H to A, will also be flowing from the wire A to B, right? So if I3 is flowing from A to B, this I3 will reach point C or junction C, and I1 minus I2 minus I3 is also reaching junction C. So if both the currents are entering junction C, then according to KCL, we have to consider these two currents as positive and add up together. So if I add these two currents, then I will obtain I1 minus I2 because I3 gets cancelled out, right? So I1 minus I2 has to leave the junction C because these two currents are entering junction C. So I1 minus I2 must leave the junction C. So if I1 minus I2 is entering the junction D and I2 is again entering the junction D, then these two currents are considered to be positive, again are added up together. So if these two are added up together, then I2 gets cancelled out and we are only left out with I1, which has to leave junction D because these two currents are entering junction D. So I1 has to leave junction D. So I1 reaches to junction E, from E it reaches to F. So I1 is the current which is entering junction F, and again I1 is leaving the junction from the junction F. So from this it is clear that the current assumption that we have done is according to KCL, right? So now what we have to do, we have to identify the different loops that are present in the circuit diagrams, right? So there are basically three different loops. What are the three different loops? The first loop is F, G, D, E, F. This is the first loop. The second loop is G, H, C, D, G. The third loop is H, A, B, C, H. So these are the three different loops. So what I need to do is that I need to form a equation using KVL for each and every loop, right? So what we'll do is that we will consider the loop 1, or this is the first loop, so we'll consider the loop 1 first. So what is loop 1? Loop 1 is F, G, D, E, F. So our direction of movement will also be in the same manner, F to G, G to D, D to E, and E to F. So starting with F, I am moving from F to G, and the current is also moving in the same direction. That means there will be a drop in IR. So what is I? I is I1 and R is 2 ohm. So it will be minus 2 I1. So the drop will be minus 2 I1. So from G to D, I encounter a resistor. So the resistor value is 4 ohm and the current is I2. So I'm moving from G to D and the current is also moving in the same direction. Again, there will be a drop of IR. So what is the value of I? I is I2. And what is the value of resistor? Over here it is 4 ohm. So the drop will be minus 4 into I2. So while reaching D, I'll move from D to E. But there are no circuit elements present in between, right? So we will move from E to F. While moving from E to F, I've encountered a voltage source, and we are moving from a negative plate to a positive plate in a voltage source. So obviously there will be a rise in potential in point F or junction F. So what is the value of that? So what is the rise value? The rise value will be plus 20 in point F. So what is the equation that is formed now? The equation is minus 2 times I1 minus 4 times I2 plus 20 equal to 0. So if I take 20 to the RHS, and then if I take minus common from both LHS and RHS, because 20 taken to RHS will be minus 20, then minus sign will be getting cancelled from both these sides, right? So obviously then if I divide LHS and RHS by 2, then I will obtain like I1 plus 2I2 equal to 10, which is marked as equation 1. Now we'll go to the next loop. The next loop is GHCDG. So the direction of movement will be also be G to H, H to C, C to D, and D to G. So we have to find the expression for loop 2, right? Starting with G, we are moving from G to H, and the current direction is also in the direction of our movement, right? So there will be a drop of IR. What is the value of I? I1 minus I2, and the resistor value is 4 ohm. So what is the drop? Drop will be minus 4 times of I1 minus I2. After reaching H, I will move to C. So if I move to C, I have encountered a resistor in between, right? So again, my movement direction is H to C, and the current is also moving in the same direction. So again, there will be a drop in IR. So what is the drop value? The current over here, I is I1 minus I2 minus I3, and the resistor value is 2 ohm. So obviously the drop will be minus 2 times I1 minus I2 minus I3. So after reaching C, I will try to move to D. While moving from C to D, I encounter a voltage source. I am moving from the positive plate of the voltage source to a negative plate. So there will be a drop of potential at point D. So if there is a drop of potential at point D, what is the drop value? That will be minus 8. I will be moving from D to G. So see, I am moving from D to G, but the current is moving in the opposite direction. That means current is flowing from higher potential to a lower potential, but I am moving from lower potential to higher potential. So that means according to my movement of direction, there will be a rise in IR. So what is the value of I? The value of I is I2, and the value of resistor is 4 ohm. So the value will be 4 times I2. So if you take a look at the equation, then it will look like minus 4 times I1 minus I2, right? Minus 2 times I1 minus I2 minus I3, then minus 8 over here, plus 4 times of I2 equal to 0. So now we'll solve the equation. So it is minus 4 times I1 minus 2 times I1. So it is minus 6 times I1, right? So over here, minus 4 into minus I2 gives you plus 4I2, minus 2 into minus I2 gives you plus 2I2. So plus 4I2 plus 2I2 gives you 6I2, plus 4I2 gives you 10I2. And there is another variable I3. So minus 2 into minus I3 will give you 2I3 as a single constant minus 8, which if taken to the RHS will be 8. So it should look like minus 6I1 plus 10I2 plus 2I3 equal to 8. So if I take 2 common, or if I divide 2 from both the LHS and RHS, I will obtain minus 3i1 plus 5i2 plus i3 equal to 4, which is marked as equation 2. Now the third loop. The third loop will have the direction of movement as H to A to B, B to C, and C to H. So this is the third loop. So starting with the third loop, if I start from H, I'll be moving from H to A. So my direction of movement is H to A, and the current is also moving in the same direction. So there will be a drop of IR. So the drop is calculated as minus 4 times of I3, right? And after reaching A, I will be moving from A to B. So while moving from A to B, see, there are no circuit elements. So after reaching B, I will be moving from B to C. So over here I encounter a voltage source. So I'm moving from a negative plate to a positive plate in the voltage source. So that means there will be a rise in potential at point C, which is plus 4. So after reaching C, I will be moving from C to H. See, I'm moving from C to H, and the current direction is in the opposite direction. That means current is moving from higher potential to a lower potential, and I am moving from a lower potential to a higher potential. That means there will be a rise in IR. So what is I? I is equal to I1 minus I2 minus I3, and the resistor value is 2 ohm. So the expression that we'll get is 2 times I1 minus I2 minus I3. So what is the equation that we get now? Equation is minus 4 times I3. This is plus 4, the voltage rise, plus 2 times of I1 minus I2 minus I3 over here, right? So I try to solve the equation. Then over here 2 times of I1 minus 2 times of I2, and over here minus 2 times of I3. So already there is a term with I3 minus 4i3, and this gives you minus 2i3. So it will be minus 6i3, and this 4 can be taken to RHS, which will now become as minus 4. So the result becomes as 2i1 minus 2i2 minus 6i3 equal to minus 4. So if I divide 2 from LHS and RHS, I will obtain as i1 minus i2 minus 3i3 equal to minus 2. So we have to basically calculate the value of I3. We have to find the current that is flowing down the wire A to B. So in order to find I3, we have to actually solve the 3 equations in order to find the value of I3. Before solving for I3, we will be taking all the 3 equations for our reference. So these are the 3 different equations. So now what we'll do is that from equation 1, we will get I1 as 10 minus 2 times of I2, right? So what we'll do is that we will substitute the value of I1 in equation 2 and 3. So when we are substituting I1 in equation 2 and 3, so obviously we will get 2 new different equations which will contain only 2 variables, I2 and I3. So then we can easily solve for I3, right? So first we'll start with equation 2. So if I substitute I1 in equation 2, then it will be minus 3 into 10 minus 2 times of I2 plus 5i2 plus I3 equal to 4, right? So now we'll try to solve the equation. So it will be minus 30 plus 6i2 plus 5i2 plus I3 equal to 4. So minus 30 plus 6i2 plus 5i2 plus I3 equal to 4. So now what we do is that 6i2 and 5i2 is 11i2 plus I3 equal to 34, because 30 if taken to this side becomes positive. So 30 plus 4 gives you 34, and the equation is marked as equation 4. So now we'll try to put I1 in equation 3. So for equation 3, I1 is substituted, so it will be 10 minus 2 times I2 minus 3i3 equal to minus 2, right? Now we have to solve the equation. So it will be minus 2 times I2 minus I2 will give you minus 3i2. So it will look something like 10 minus 3i2 minus 3i3 equal to minus 2. If 10 is taken to RHS, so it will become minus 10, and already minus 2 is present. So minus 10 minus 2 will give you minus 12, and if minus is taken common from both sides, then minus gets cancelled out, and we are left out with 3i2 plus 3i3 equal to 12. So if we divide LHS and RHS by 3, we will get I2 plus I3 equal to 4, which is marked as equation 5. So from equation 4 and 5, it is clear that if we actually subtract equation 5 from equation 4, then I3 will be cancelled out. So 11i2 plus I3 equal to 34 from equation 4, and I2 plus I3 equal to 4 from equation 5. So if I need to subtract these 2 equations, I3 will be getting cancelled out. We will be left out with I2 variable only since we are subtracting it. So that means 11i2 minus I2 will give you 10i2, and 34 minus 4 will give you 30. So I2 will then be equal to 3 amperes. So if I2 is 3 amperes, we can easily substitute the value of I2 in equation 5. Then I3 will then be equal to 4 minus I2, which is 4 minus 3 equal to 1 ampere. So I3 equal to 1 ampere means I3 is the current which is flowing down from the wire AB, or which is the shorted circuit path. So that is the Norton's current as well. So the Norton's current is successfully calculated, which is IN equal to 1 ampere. So after calculating Norton's current, now our next objective will be to calculate the equivalent resistance. So the value of IN is positive in nature, so that means the direction of current that we have assumed in the circuit diagram is also correct. If the value of the IN would have been negative, then our assumed direction of current was wrong and we have to actually reverse the current direction. So that is what it is said here. The value of I3, which is also our IN equal to 1 ampere, is moving from terminal A to B. If the value of I3 would have been negative, then the direction of current would be in the opposite with respect to the assumed current direction. So our next objective would be to calculate the equivalent resistance, which is given by Rn, and the process of calculating Rn is basically exactly same as that of Thevenin's equivalent resistance calculation, right? So now again we will consider the circuit diagram. See, in this circuit diagram we are not short circuiting A and B. So while calculating the equivalent resistance, we will not short circuit A and B. Please keep this in mind. While calculating the current, we will be short circuiting A and B, but while calculating the equivalent resistance, we will keep the terminals as open, right? The terminals A and B will not be short circuited, right? So now if you see carefully, then you see that the entire circuit diagram is missing with all the voltage sources. So all the voltage sources that were present over here and over here are now short circuited. So while calculating the equivalent resistance, if the internal impedances of the voltage sources are given, then we have to substitute the voltage sources with their internal impedances. Since in our question we are not given with any internal impedances of all the voltage sources that were present over here, we have actually short circuited all the voltage sources. Since our voltage sources are ideal voltage sources, so we are not given with any internal impedances, so we are basically short circuiting all the voltage sources. That is what it is written here. So in order to calculate Rn, we have to check whether the voltage sources which were present inside the box have any internal resistance or not. That is, whether they are ideal voltage sources or not. If they are not ideal voltage sources, then replace each voltage source with their internal resistance. Otherwise, simply short the circuit, right? So we have actually short the circuit. So what if there were no voltage sources and there were some current sources instead, or there were voltage sources or current sources present in our circuit? For voltage sources the concept is clear, but for current sources we will actually open circuit those places. So if there were current sources instead of voltage source, then we would have open circuited those places. Starting with the circuit diagram, so this is the circuit diagram, and over here see R1 and R2 are parallel to each other. So if R1 and R2 are parallel to each other, that means the equivalent resistance for R1 and R2 will then be given by R1 into R2 divided by R1 plus R2. So that means 2 into 4 whole divided by 2 plus 4. So plus 8 by 6. If I divide numerator and denominator by 2, we obtain 4 by 3 ohm. So these two resistances would be then combined into a single resistance, and over here I have labeled the single resistance of these two resistances as R2, and R2 will have a equivalent resistance of 4 by 3 ohm, right? I have assumed R2 as the new equivalent resistance for the resistors R1 and R2. So now we move to the next resistor R3. So R2 and R3 are in series. So if R2 and R3 in series, then we need to add these two resistors, right? So 4 by 3 plus 4 by 3 plus 4 will give you 16 by 3 ohm. So now R2 and R3 will have a single equivalent resistance, and that equivalent resistance I have assumed it as R2. So R2 is the new equivalent resistance of the resistor values R2 and R3, and the value of R2 is 16 by 3 ohm, right? Now moving to the next resistor R4. So R2 and R4 are parallel to each other, so that means 16 by 3 into 2 whole divided by 16 by 3 plus 2. So 16 by 3 into 2 whole divided by 16 by 3 plus 2 gives you 32 by 3 divided by 22 by 3, which implies 16 by 11 ohm. So again these two resistors will be combined into a single equivalent resistance as R4. This R4 is the new equivalent resistance, and the value of R4 is given by 16 by 11 ohm. So again R4 and R5 are in series, so R4 and R5 will be added up together. So it will be 16 by 11 plus 4 will give you 60 by 11 ohm. So 60 by 11 ohm is the equivalent resistance for the entire circuit, right? So we'll obtain a single equivalent resistance which is denoted by Rn equal to 60 by 11 ohm, so which is the Norton's equivalent resistance and which has a value of 60 by 11 ohm. So we know the value of IN, we know the value of Rn and the value of RL, which is 8 ohm. So now the Norton equivalent circuit will look something like this. So the current source is IN, this resistor is Rn, and this resistor is R. So obviously you can understand the Rn and RL are parallel to each other, right? So if I try to label, then IN is equal to 1 ampere, the current source, and this particular resistor is Rn, which is 60 by 11 ohm, Norton's equivalent resistance, and RL is equal to 8 ohm. If you observe the current source, you will see that the current is moving from bottom to top direction. Why the current is moving from bottom to top direction? If you observe terminals A and B, see, we have already assumed that the current direction was moving from A to B, and since the value of IN is in positive, so the current is actually moving from A to B, right? So if the current is moving from A to B, that means after reaching B, it will move in this direction, then it will move in this direction, then it has to move in this direction, then only it will move in this direction, then it will move in this direction, right? So if it is moving in this direction, then coming to this particular junction, it will now move down. Current has to be in this direction, otherwise the current would not be flowing from A to B. So that is what we have actually considered. So the direction of IN will depend upon the direction of the current from the load resistor. Since the current is flowing from A to B, so the direction of current in the current source IN is from bottom to top. So if I see the illustration over here, see the current is moving from A to B. If the current has to flow in this direction, that is from A to B, right? So the current from this junction has to flow from this junction to this junction. So if I come to this junction, then in order to move the current in this direction, then I have to move from this junction to this junction, and in order to move the current in this direction, I have to move from this junction to this junction. So that is why the current is in this direction. So this is the reason why the current is in this direction. If the current direction is from B to A, then the current direction in the current source would be in the opposite direction, right? So now if we have to calculate the current that is flowing through the load resistor RL, it is given as I equal to IN times Rn divided by Rn plus RL, right? So we have to just substitute the value in this particular expression. So IN we know it is 1 ampere, Rn we know it is 60 by 11, RL we know it is 8 ohm. So now we obtain 60 by 11 divided by 148 by 11. So 11 will get cancelled out. We are left with 60 by 148. So if I divide both numerator and denominator by 4, then we'll obtain 15 by 37 amperes, which is the current that is flowing across the resistor RL. So I is then given as 15 by 37 ampere, which is the final answer of our example using Norton's theorem. I hope you have understood how to calculate the current across any given resistor using Norton's theorem, right? So now I will be giving a practice problem as an exercise. So the practice problem is this circuit. This circuit is again the same circuit as we have considered in Thevenin's theorem lecture. So the question again is the same: find the current in 4 ohm resistor using Norton's theorem. So if you can solve the circuit successfully, then also comment in the section, and if you are not able to solve the circuit, if there is any problem solving it, then also comment in the comment section. So we have come to the end of our lecture. So thank you for watching the video till the end. Please subscribe to my channel, like and share as much as you can, and help us grow. Thank you.